So welcome back guys. In the last episode we looked at how this entire deck frame was installed, and in this one we will cover laying the deck, the fascia boards, LED lighting and some basic pest control measures. I hope you like it, and let's continue with the build. I bought 50 of this composite decking boards from Wix. The color is called Cape Town Grey, and to hold the deck onto the frame I'll be using this hidden fasteners from a company called Hulk, and wherever I can't use the fasteners I'll be using these decking screws, which are also grey in color. So these concealed fasteners have got two lips on either side, and what happens is that they slide into the groove of the two deck boards and hold that in place. All you have to do once it's in place is that you need to screw it from the top. Now even before I started assembling the deck, I hit my first problem, and that's this post of my pergola. So to cut this I need to cut a notch on one of the boards, and to get the exact measurements you have to butt two of the decks together along with the hidden fastener, and then using a sliding square take the measurement of how much it overhangs, and that overhang will be the length which you need to cut. And I just repeated the same step again on the back side of the pergola. And using a jigsaw, I just followed the marks and cut out all the waste area. And with that, it's time to test fit it. And yes, it looks perfect, but I didn't get it right in the first time, and I had to fine tune it a few times before I managed to get this much of a precise fit. And now it's time to install the first row of this hidden fasteners. So I just slid it all in place, making sure that the first deck was clamped, and then using the supplied bit I started driving in the screws. Now for the first row which you see over here, I couldn't get the starter kit to work properly. So what I'm planning to do, or what I actually did, is that I used deck screws and just sunk it in. So I pre-drilled it, counter-sunk it, and then I drove the screws in. The only other thing to be aware over here is that you use your handheld driver in a lower setting. And that's a comparison between the normal deck screws and the screws which came with the hidden fasteners. So right here you can see the comparison between the fasteners showing on the board and the hidden fasteners. At a first glance you actually don't even see those fasteners, which is probably why it is called a hidden fastener. Anyway, I like it, and let's continue. And now it's time to cut the notch on the other side of the board. So I just followed the same steps which I did before. That is, I used a scrap piece of the deck along with the fastener in place, and then took the measurement with a sliding square. And after cutting that in the required length, I just screwed all the fasteners back in place. And now it's just rinse and repeat. And we'll now talk about installing the hidden fasteners in detail. So you can see in this row I already have the fasteners in place, but the screws are above and they are not driven in fully. And once you put the new deck in and put that all in place, put the next set of fasteners way behind it and push it inwards towards the deck. Drive that fastener in around 50% of the height and drive the one on the front fully down. And that's the way to install the fasteners. So here I'm just repeating the same process again. That is, I'll put the new fastener in, drive that around 50% of the height, and then on the other one, which is already in between the two boards, I drive that down fully. So just repeating what I said earlier in the video, that is, when you're driving the screws in, make sure that you set your driver to the setting 1 on the torque and put your chuck around 3 or 5 or something lower like that. The reason being that you don't want to strip the screws or break the plastic of the fasteners. And trust me, I know that from experience. Now, based on the layout of your deck, sometimes you need to cut out sections of a future deck board even before you put an earlier deck down. And that's to accommodate these kind of odd shapes in your deck, which is posts or paragola, legs and all that. Now, to fasten these, you can just slide the hidden fasteners from the front end of the deck. And now let's talk about installing the deck lights. So these are white LED deck lights, and I'm going to run it off that junction box all the way underneath the deck, and the LEDs will be dotted across the circumference of the deck. Now they are polished stainless steel, and the width of each of them are like 15 mm, and there's 10 in a pack. And over here I think I paid around 24 pounds or something for that. These are the various pieces of it. So you got the input power coming into a transformer which steps it down to 12 volt DC, and then it goes into these LED lights. Now these are around 15 mm wide, and to drill a hole you need a 12 mm drill bit. The way how you put the LED lights into that is, after you create the 12 mm hole, you just push it in. It's as simple as that. You can see that the clips underneath, they hold that in place. So if you want to remove it in a future date or something, you can just push it up from behind. Using a 12 mm drill bit, I punched in all the holes which you see over here. And then I just slid this cable all the way down, and from underneath the deck I pulled the wire out and just popped it in place. Even though all the connections are IP65 rated, I didn't want to leave it lying exposed underneath the deck. So I figured out it's probably a good idea to put them all in this IP66 junction box. The entry of the cables are through these cable glands. All the excess wires from every single individual LED lights can now be cable tied and just dropped in it. There's also a drain hole drilled in this box as well, so that any rainwater or condensation can just flow out. And all entry points are then sealed with this exterior grade silicone sealant. And this 12 volt transformer, that's going to be held on to the decking frame, and I'm going to use the cable cleats to hold that in place. Now make sure that you switch off the power that supplies current to the circuit for obvious reasons. To wire it in, I'm going to cut the 3-pin plug and connect it to the appropriate socket here, and that's going to be based on the amps used by your LED lights. And I also did another video earlier on this outdoor wiring, so if you're interested in that, please have a look in my channel, or I'll leave a link somewhere here. Even though I tried to make the width of the entire deck to match the width of individual deck board plus the width of the fasteners, I still came out around 2 inches short, which is roughly 5 centimeters in metric. Well, to solve this, I ripped a deck board on my table saw to the dimensions that I needed, and I also raised the height of the blade so as to match the height of the groove of a deck board, and then I took 2 passes to match that shape. Now it's just screwing it all back onto the deck frame. And now it's time to install the fascia boards. So unlike the deck boards, which are 20 mm thick, these are only 12 mm thick, and it's going to get screwed onto the deck frame. The only pain for me is that the deck rises, the green thing sticks out. So I have to make sure that I cut a notch on the fascia frames so that it just slides in. And for that, I created this template, and then using a jigsaw, I cut it all out. And now let's talk about these galvanized mesh. They come in rolls of 6 meter long, 900 mm wide, and each mesh in itself is around 13 mm square. So using tin snips, I just cut it all in length, and I hope this would deter as a pest control mechanism of sorts. I mean, the idea is to create a barrier so that smaller animals like mice and fox and all that they don't go underneath the deck. And around the green markers over here, I again use the tin snips to make a small groove so that the whole mesh can slide in. And once that's done, I use the fascia board as an anchor kind of a mechanism and screw it all in place in one go. Now on the right hand side of the deck, because of the pond, I just used the galvanized mesh, folded it around the entire perimeter of the pond which goes underneath the deck, and then using this hot glue gun, I just hot glued the whole thing in place. So I ran a really thick bead of the hot glue all over the perimeter in the hope that it won't come out. It looks really solid when I tested it as well. By now it was getting really dark, but I just wanted to finish that part of the fascia board, so I used my twin LED lights and just finished screwing it all in place. So far it looks good. Now the next day, I just cut the fascia boards to the exact dimensions which I need on my Evolution miter saw, and I basically repeated the same structure. That is, I put the galvanized mesh on the front and then used the fascia board to sandwich it in place. that, this deck build is now complete. I mean, there are still a few pieces left, like I'm planning to create an L-shaped planter all around the perimeter. So there'll be one on this side, and there'll be one next to the pond here as well. And in the front, between the two posts which you see here, I'm planning to build a staircase so that you have a one step onto the deck. I hope you like this build, guys, and if you like it, give me a like and leave a comment below. And if you're not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing as well. So thanks very much.